So for golf, I think she's unbelievable role model. I think whether she'll get many people into golf, I don't know. I don't know if that's
hard to measure, I guess.
It's really hard to measure. But with millions of followers that she has, millions on YouTube, well, maybe not YouTube millions yet, but she gets some massive views on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, whatever other platform she has. It would be wrong to say she doesn't bring people into golf. She doesn't put people.
Week before last, we had Sophie Walker on, who was absolutely class. The comments about Sophie Walker's podcast were phenomenal. People loved her.
Yeah.
I must admit, I knew she'd be good because obviously she's got loads of good stories. She's media trained, but she was probably even better than I thought. Just the conversation was so good. And we, as always, had questions from our awesome Facebook group. If you're not a part of that, feel free to join. It's the Rick Shiels Golf Show podcast on Facebook. And we'll often ask for questions before a podcast. And we had loads for Sophie, but we could only pick half a dozen. And one of the questions was, what does Sophie think of like Paige Spiranac, and is she good for golf?
Yes.
So I put that forward to Sophie, and if you remember, if you've heard the podcast, listening close, I actually said at the start, we can cut this out if we don't want to answer it, which we never do. The podcasts are always kind of long form, and just what you hear is what goes on. We don't ever cut anything because there's never anything to cut really. And Sophie said, "Why would I want to cut that out? No, I'll answer that question." So we had a discussion about Paige Spiranac, and the clip on YouTube, on the second channel, did quite good numbers.
People were very interested in the topic.
Yeah. Now, we did use quite a provocative thumbnail. A little bit. Now, I don't want to say clickbait, because for me, when I think of clickbait, a clickbait video would be you saying, "Rick Shiels, I'm quitting YouTube." Yes. And you click on that video and it's go, "Right, guys, I'm going to review the new Pro V1 today."
Yeah, you thought I was going to quit YouTube, but I've completely misled you. I think there's a grey area. We sometimes get wrongly accused of clickbait, and like I say, for me, clickbait is when it's really, really misleading, like when it's completely not related to the video whatsoever. Where if it's just a juicy part, if it's a headline story of that video and we use that for the title, that's not clickbait.
Well, I mean, if you had any industry, like if you had a restaurant, you're not going to put on the windows, "We sell rubbish food," are you? You're going to sell, we sell succulent nuggets.
Correct. Our vibe in this place is very
chilled out, entertaining vibe. You're going to enjoy it. Exactly.
Correct.
Best drinks, best food, best atmosphere. So it's not really clickbait. But anyway, we did that video about Paige. It did good numbers. And off the back of it, Paige, who has her own very, very successful podcast, was a little bit annoyed at us, more so you, I would say. And she was a little bit angry for a couple of reasons. I'm going to let you elaborate on this big in a minute, but let me just set the scene. She was a little bit angry that people keep asking, "Is Paige good for golf?" And I can get that to some degree. And she was also a bit annoyed that you kind of sat there and didn't slag her off, but also didn't big her up. You just kind of sat there very muted. And the third thing she was annoyed about was that when we put that video out onto Twitter, the link to YouTube, we didn't ever tag her. It just said, "Is she good for golf?" or "Is this good for golf?" And then there was the video below it. She would have liked to have been tagged, and she felt like you had a relationship to some degree where you speak on DMs occasionally, you really kind of pally and stuff. So that's where we're at. She then did her podcast, and for about 10 minutes, literally was almost shouting. She was very, very angry. She was very, kind of rightly so to some degree, I guess. She was upset.
Lead it on to me.
Yeah, go.
So it's really interesting. For me, the question obviously came from one of our followers, as you mentioned, and we asked Sophie her opinion. That was the question. She was a guest on our podcast, and we asked Sophie's opinion. I sat back. I didn't really say a great deal because it was, again, not my time to say anything. And I feel, certainly in the past, over social media, albeit Instagram, YouTube, I've left several messages. Like I said, we've exchanged messages, me and Paige, before in the past, and she's jumped on one of my videos before in the past as like a little cameo role. And I've always been outrageously supportive of what she does. I think what she does in her, probably break it down into a couple of things. Let's start off with golf first. What does she do for golf? Well, she makes golf look cool.
Yeah.
For one, like she makes golf. She's always out there in beautiful weather, swinging the golf club fantastically. She obviously is a very talented golfer. She probably would admit it. She wasn't talented enough to make it out on full tour, which is obviously it's super hard to do so.
Would you say she was a better level than yourself? Obviously in the women's game.
I think because she went through that like college game and everything.
She can play then.
And I feel like when you go through that kind of college build up and you've got that pedigree of competitiveness in you, she probably could switch it on and properly play. And she practices plenty, and she's got a great golf swing. She's obviously looking at now getting new clubs. She's had sponsored clubs in the past, and now she's almost like reviewing clubs on a YouTube channel and seeing which one's best of her, etc. So for golf, I think she's unbelievable role model. I think whether she'll get many people into golf, I don't know. I don't know if that's
hard to measure, I guess.
It's really hard to measure. But with millions of followers that she has, millions on YouTube, well, maybe not YouTube millions yet, but she gets some massive views on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, whatever other platform she has. It would be wrong to say she doesn't bring people into golf. She doesn't put people off golf, let's be honest.
Yeah, she's definitely not doing anything wrong for golf.
Correct. So she's got to be bringing people into golf. So that's that side. From a business side, I think early days, and Sophie alluded to it on the podcast when we had her in, I don't think she quite got it right from the early start, which is hard because she was, and she said it in her Instagram bio, she's the OG, the original Instagram golfer girl.
Yep.
She is, without question. And I think at first she made not wrong decisions, but companies, it's the right word, almost wrongly utilised her in a way that she maybe wasn't quite switched on enough at the time. And she'll probably, again, admit that. Now, I feel like she's got a business lined up. She would charge a lot of money for appearances, a lot of money for ads, a lot of money for sponsorship deals, whatever it may be, and she justifies that value because, again, to get eyeballs and the interaction she gets on her post are outrageous.
The engagement's through the roof. She's got, I think, collectively, she's probably upwards of 10 million followers, I think, because she's got, well, maybe not quite, but she's got 3 million on Insta, roughly. Same on Facebook, that's 6. 250,000 or something on YouTube, and then about 400,000 on Twitter, and then TikTok as well. So she's upwards of 10 mil, and her engagement is high.
Yeah, every time she posts, loads of comments. And you know, in that side of things, as a business, I think she's done a really good job as well. So there's no, for me, there's almost no massive downside to it. The only thing that I think some think as a downside is that she is using her beauty, her sex appeal, whatever, as a advantage. But I don't think that if I had it, I would do that as well. Do you know what I mean? So if Paige is listening, there's no beef. There's no, I didn't say a lot in that podcast because it wasn't my time to say anything. But I've been chats to her since. We've cleared the air, and she's hoping to come on the podcast soon.
Yeah, would be good. I think, do you wish you had said this on the podcast now last week? Or well,
probably
the
only
before?
thing, the last line I should have maybe said, looking back at it, I watched the clip back and gone, I didn't say a lot, did I? And I don't know why I didn't say a lot. There was no reason why. It's not that, if let's say Sophie, which I'm sure she wouldn't have done, but if the guest had started saying, oh, I really don't like her, you know, she's not great for golf, then that's probably where I would have jumped in and gone, no, you're wrong there.
Yeah. It
was probably just because I was in agreement with Sophie.
Well, actually, neither of us, rightly or wrongly, kind of expressed our views, because on that YouTube clip, it actually got really good. Not only did it get good views, it got really good engagement, which is the biggest thing.
And it was a grown-up conversation.
It was completely a grown-up conversation. And like I said, it was obvious it was going to get clicks because of the thumbnail, let's be honest. But the actual comment section was really good, and I think most people really enjoyed it. And the like to dislike ratio was really high as well. It's quite common if you get like a clickable video that people do dislike it for whatever reason, but it didn't. The only thing I think I would disagree with her to some degree, or not maybe disagree, but is she said in that on her podcast as well that she's very kind of sick of people saying, is she good for golf? And she had it for the last 5 years. So I understand that. She probably is sick of it, that through 5 years of her making content and good content, people are saying, is she good for golf?
But I also, on that, I get sick of people asking me, am I sponsored?
Exactly.
Like,
are you a real pro?
Do you get paid to review those equipments? The questions that I get asked, and we see it on social media all the time, that I get asked all the time.
And that's it. And I think, unfortunately for Paige, if she wants to continue growing, which she will do, and gaining more subscribers and more followers, and attracts more non-golfers and golfers to the game, unfortunately for her, if you like, that question is going to happen. You can't have both ways. You can't be gaining new subscribers, and you're the same as this. You can't be getting new subscribers and then be upset when people say you're sponsored, because it's new people who have questions to ask.
Exactly.
So for Paige, as long as she keeps growing, which again she will continue to do, I'm sure, it's going to happen. It's going to keep popping up. She might say, well, she thought better of us to ask that question, but equally, we had so many people who were enjoying the conversation. So I think it was good. I'm glad you've kind of sorted out with her, and there's no beef.
Well, there isn't. We've probably not had the opportunity to ask many people the question either, because, you know, when we did when people knew we had Sophie on the podcast, probably that person that you picked out wasn't the only time somebody asked about Paige. Like, she is a hot topic in golf, and rightly so, because she has such a massive following. So there's no beef. Can't wait to get her on the podcast. If we have to clear the air again, I'll clear the air. So I bang my watch in. Not anger. And it'd be great to do
Stop banging your watch, Rick.
It'd be great to do a YouTube video again in the future.
No, we've done a proper last thing I would just kind of semi-disagree with. I think she made a really good argument and she was very passionate and it was great to see. The last thing I would just say it wasn't quite fair. She said in her podcast that we were kind of against slagging off other influencers and you're an influencer. Yeah. And that wasn't quite true. What we were getting to is that I'm personally not a big fan of when people come into golf, create a space, whether that be Instagram or YouTube, and don't really have an interest in the game, but I've thought that's an easy way to get some followers because it's still quite a small market, really. And there's a few people, I'm not going to start naming names, there's a few people who've cropped up on Instagram the last couple of years who put such and such thing, golf, at the end of the name and just post pictures and don't really actually play golf. And I think that is wrong. Yeah. Someone like Mia Baker has done a great thing where she's come into golf and she's got a great following. She actually wants to get good at golf. Yeah, she's doing something good for the game. She's making it. We had her on the podcast and she was great. So it's not that you've got an issue with influencers. It's people that choose it as an easy way to get followers. That's the problem.
I think there's different categories of influencers. I mean, I know I am that, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of that term, I know I am an influencer. It's what it kind of comes with the role. But it's like you said, that there's different categories of golf, of influencers, should I say. And that's not just in golf. That's across all genres, whether it's in the beauty world, whether it's in the hair and makeup, whether it's in the protein stuff from like muscle people. I bet that's a nightmare because as soon as you get a bit beefed up in the gym, suddenly you're promoting protein bars or whatever, and you're getting a following from it and getting paid from it. So it's just that fine balance. It's not against influencers as a whole. There is just some bad nuggets of influencers out there which sometimes bring the name put a bad mark against influencers.
Do you remember when I used to be an influencer, when I started pushing the mini egg chocolate bar?
Exactly.
So if you don't like influencers, you don't like me.
As I said, there's some good ones.
That was a really good one.
So hopefully that's cleared the air.
That'll be a good clip for YouTube as well. So I've got another
More
bite
clicks. Thanks, Paige.